Welcome. Good morning, good evening. Receive our humble greetings. My name is Piwe from South Africa. I am a content creator, a writer, a storyteller, and the founder of Buhlali Have Africa. So, Buhlali Africa is a platform that amplifies the voices of Africans on the continent. Today, we launch our season one, Africans Cough It Out Now. So, Africans Cough It Out Now is a platform where we will be educating, connecting, and addressing some of the societal issues that we face on the African continent. We are not affiliated to any political organization. We are affiliated to the Africans on the continent. We are affiliated to Africans and African people. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. So as you join in today, please do drop us a comment. Share with us where you are streaming with us from. Also, if you're battling to access the stream, please kindly head over to our YouTube channel, which is Piwe Mwabe, as it appears on the screen. So today I've got a very, very special guest with us, and I cannot wait to have this conversation with the special guest. And thank you so much. So Ntsane, welcome. How are you doing?
Priya, thank you very much for first and foremost for the invitation. I'm really honored to be the first speaker for this show of yours. So thank you very much for that. I'm quite excited about this. I think it's an important conversation that we need to have as Africans, in particular as youth, because often we've been told the story that we are the future, and I think these platforms enable us to create spaces for ourselves where we can really have honest and deep conversations about the state of Africa and how we can be in charge of rebuilding and building Africa that we have a great vision for ourselves so that we can leave it a better continent for the next upcoming youth. So thank you very much, and I hope to contribute positively and add a bit of value to these discussions. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ntane. I love what you said about to contribute positively and be be one with rebuilding this nation. As we can see, the
Mm.
state of our nation is not pleasing. We have this beautiful nation, however, it's not pleasing. We can do better. We have it in us to do better. So before we start, please just introduce yourself and tell us what you do so that our audience can know. Just introduce yourself for three for 3 seconds.
3 seconds is not a it's not enough.
I know, because you do great things. Yeah, I know it's not enough because you do great things. So 3 seconds is just too, yeah.
So okay, Ntsane Matla is a lecturer at one of institutions of higher learning in South Africa. That's VUT, Valley University of Technology, and then also a speaker and a facilitator, and I specialize on personal development and communication. So in a sense, that is what I do.
Oh my
I'm a
goodness.
lecturer and a speaker, yes, and
So
facilitator also.
you're the best person to have this conversation with. So let's just get right into it. So today we'll be tackling unemployment, corruption, and just a bit of Operation Dubula. Let's just get right into it. So last year, Nzani, in I think quarter 4, unemployment. This is specific to South Africa, rose from 34.9% to 35.3%, and this includes the discouraged job seekers. So I just wanted to know from you, why do you think we still have a challenge of youth unemployment? Like, let's take it down to South Africa, where we come from right now. Yes.
Look, I think we first and foremost we have to acknowledge the fact that the issue of unemployment has always been there in South Africa. Right? We can recall as far as back as 2008. I mean, that was after the entire world has just experienced a meltdown economically. But in the context of South Africa, the challenges have always been there. But I think over the past few years, they have escalated. And you are quite correct to mention those statistics. That is one thing that I also did. And you're quite correct. I think, look, the mismatch of what our economy requires and what our education system offers, there's a huge mismatch between those two. And so if our economy is not willing to absorb the graduates that are being produced at our universities, then that is a bigger problem. So I think first and foremost, we need to look at what kind of skills are we enhancing in our institutions of higher learning? Are they needed in our mainstream economy? If not, then how then do we change that? Because I think we have seen over the past few years, I mean, can take for instance, the fees must fall. Access to education is a must for an African child. But now the question is the curriculum or the content that is offered to a student relevant to what our economy needs? And I think that is one thing that we need to look at. Also, and I know like a lot of people would have their own views about this, but entrepreneurship is also something that we also need to look at, right? Do we have enough young people going into entrepreneurship? But far much more important, are there opportunities or spaces that are there that would require that we have more entrepreneurs? And definitely, I mean, I was on LinkedIn, I think it must have been past few days, and then one lady was asked a question that why does she invest into South Africa, in Africa particularly, and she said there is a lot of opportunities in Africa. And if you look at Africa, I think it is the second largest continent in the world. And I think that the projections are that by 2020, 2024, I cannot recall the year, the estimate of African people will be 2.4 billion people. So that alone tells you that there is a huge gap for entrepreneurs, either in the education sector, technology-wise, there is ample of opportunities. What you just need is entrepreneurs stepping into that. But also, right, access is also important, and that is where our government comes into place. Are they creating enough spaces that enable our entrepreneurs to tap into those? Is there good infrastructure that enables entrepreneurs to be able to operate effectively? So we've got ample of challenges that we're faced with. Number one, ASCOM in South Africa. I mean, you and I can relate to that. I mean,
Yes.
earlier on when I gave you a call in relation to the brief of this conversation, you told me that you experienced load shedding. As a matter of fact, I also experienced the same problem last night. So these are some of the things that our government also need to take into consideration, that they need to play their part so that when entrepreneurs come into the space, there is an environment that is conducive enough that enables them to be able to operate in that space.
Wow. You know, Ntsane, I love what you said about the realities that we also need to address what kind of skills what are the skills that we are producing in these universities? Are they what the economy needs? Because many of us are going to school, many graduates are, many young people are going to school to get an education because we are told in order to better your life, you need to go to school, and then they go to school, and then you find young people are have been staying at home, not getting access to these opportunities for like 5 to 7 years before just having that opportunity to get employment. So you mentioned something very important: the skills that are needed to in make our economy large, as well as you mentioned something very important again in terms of access. So the government is always directing young people into entrepreneurship, but is the environment enough? Is there access? Can they actually tap into this field? Because in order to be an entrepreneur, you also need the funding. You can't just hop into entrepreneurship because it's a solution to unemployment. You also need the resources in order to make your entrepreneurship one with growth and meaningful, that will impact the the economy, have an impact on the economy and other people as well. So, I just love what you said about that. And I also wanted to know, so how do we address this issue of unemployment, of youth unemployment?
I think like the first thing that we need to do, and I think perhaps maybe the private sector, business sector, and government, all of those spheres can come together and really ask ourselves, what is it that we need to advance our countries, right? So, like I mentioned, if you look at other countries, they've advanced, they are far ahead of us. Like I'll give a typical example, like Elon Musk, right? Tesla, right? So in that regard, they are far ahead of us. But that doesn't mean that there are other areas that we can also tap into, right? So I think the first thing that we need to look into, and I know a lot of people have spoken about this, and I work at an institution of higher learning, and I see this problem far too often, right? That a lot of students want to come to universities, and there's nothing wrong about that, and they end up neglecting TVETs. And if you can look at TVETs, they offer practical skills that are needed in our economies. So I think there needs to be a broad interaction amongst all spheres involved, that our young people really need to tap into TVET colleges so that they can develop the necessary skills that are required. I know for a fact that where I'm from, my hometown is in fact 15 minutes away from where I reside. Sasol farm is there, but I know a lot of people would rather go to universities and neglect TVETs. That is, I think we do have one that is there, but a lot of people are not willing to take part in that. So I think that is one thing that we need to look into. But also the government must also play their part. I think for quite a while our government has been promising to create job opportunities, but in fact they failed dismally. If you look at the statistics, they will tell you that. So I think our government must relook at their approach and really be intentional about how they can be able to give jobs that can enable young people to play a critical role in our mainstream economy. So I really think that first and foremost, business, private sector, and the government must really play their part in that regard. And that will also try to open up a lot of opportunities that lay behind those conversations.
Amazing. Practical skills is very important because if you look at it, when an average person is just looking for an employment, first thing that pops up is the experience, or the experience that you build for
Exactly.
you to have to get, yes, to get access to that opportunity. And here you are, you talk about colleges which are neglected, and it comes with the perception that it comes with being a TVET college. Yes, you want a degree, however, it's together. So I love what you said about that. And here you are again, bringing in the government saying, we cannot do this alone. So this is a joint effort. As much as we are out here producing solutions, we cannot do this by ourselves. The government needs to also meet us. And you speak about the promises as well. We've been waiting for these promises. We've been waiting for the implementation phase, because we've had the TEPO 1 million and everything, all sorts of these initiatives that come into, and we are not disregarding them. No. We're not saying no, let's leave them aside and all of that. However, what the government also needs to understand is that we are growing. Our population is increasing yearly. Like, more young
Yeah.
people are, yes, we are increasing, and the youth is one of the largest populations just in Africa. So we need more. We cannot be, reliant on we are going to do this. We are still sitting down and strategizing. There is no
Yeah.
time to be strategized. Like I always tell you, Ntsane, that there's no time to be strategizing, because when unemployment hits, it hits. Like, it hits. Because I always say this to people, that unemployment for me comes in different categories. There are people that when they're unemployed, they have no access to a meal right now, as we're speaking. Having
Mm.
access to a meal is very, very difficult for them. There are those who are unemployed who can have access to data. Others cannot have access to data to go and look for those jobs. Others are battling to even have access to, sanitary towels, toiletries, and all of that because of the lack of unemployment. So we need to also, and I think what the government needs to understand is that unemployment affects us differently, and we cannot be waiting on the promises or waiting on creating more policies and so forth. And this brings me to my next question, because here we are, we're speaking about unemployment, we're speaking about how the government needs to assist us, and we have this hanging this elephant in the room always present to say corruption. Corruption, like, hello, corruption,
Yeah,
nepotism,
you know, yeah,
mismanagement, maladministration. It's here. It's here.
yeah,
Like,
I think that is the bone of contention, and I think we have seen the effects on corruption, and what disturbs about corruption is the fact that the person who suffers the most is those
yes,
at the lowest count, and those are the poor. So
yes,
as it is, the government would say we're trying to better the lives of our people, but at the same time, it is filled with corruptions. And also, the institutions, the law enforcement are not effective enough in addressing these issues. I mean, you and I can count uh, many examples of corruptions, but up until to this day, we still have not seen any effective resolutions taken upon those who are corrupt. And I think also it also boils down to us as a society. Are we doing enough to hold our government accountable?
yes, yes,
And uh, and I think to a certain degree we have not.
yes,
And one thing that I have realized, in particular in the South African context, once we allow corruption to exist, if we do nothing about it, one thing that we're very good at is that we are always willing to go to Twitter and Facebook and call out these people. But at the end of the day, that is that. We hardly ever protest, make meaningful protests. We hardly ever seen the law enforcement uh, taking measures against these people who are corrupt. So at the end of the day, it's something that we are kind of used to. So even if somebody says corruption this, corruption that, we are going to yell, make noise about it. But then tomorrow morning is just another day. We move on. And also, I think that also speaks about the caliber of the leaders that we have. Because my view is that to a certain degree, a leader or the leaders that we have are a true reflection of the kind of society that you do have around you, or the kind of people that you have around you. So if you have leaders who are corrupt and they know that you are only going to yell and make noise about that and you're not going to hold them accountable, it's going to be a normal day to them. They are going to do as they please. So also we must also ask ourselves collectively as society that what are we willing to do to hold our leaders accountable?
mm. You mentioned something very important: accountability. Like you said, what do we do? What We just go on Twitter to rant, and then we move on with our lives. There are, we
Exactly.
have our leaders who still sit in these hold office.
Yeah.
The minute a leader is found in these maladministration, these big cases, what happens is that the case prolongs. And what are we doing? Is that what are we doing? And what hurts me about the lack of accountability amongst these leaders is that as a society we've given up. We don't wake up in the morning and
Mm,
go and vote. When it's time to vote, people are sitting indoors, and that's what
yeah.
really really does. It gets to me because looking at the history of South Africa and the oppression that we're subjected to, we were not given an opportunity to vote. And now that we have this opportunity to vote in who we want, we sit and we use the no kuyafana, it's all the same, it's okay, or no, I'm not going to vote because I'm not part of it. You're not part of it, but you still encounter unemployment, load shedding every day. Like, why are we also not playing our part to say here we are, we're going to get out of our homes. When it's time to vote, we're going to go there, we're going to make that and change our leadership need be. So that's, accountability is very important. And my question to you, so
I
how
think
do you think we should deal with corruption in the most effective way?
I think one of the best, and here's the thing about corruption, we must understand that corruption is everywhere. And it's not only under the ruling party that we have seen it. Even previously, it's always been there. But I think perhaps maybe one thing that we do not, or that we maybe take for granted, and it's something that just popped into my mind right now while you're just, talking, is that I think to a great extent, as the youth, we undermine political power. And I think that is the beauty about democracy, is that we have the political power in the sense that we can vote you in and we can vote you out. And because we have not, and because we have accepted the standard of leadership that has been provided to us, we have not been able to imagine a new leadership that can come into place. And that can be, alluded to various reasons that we may all have. And I don't want to tap into that. But one thing that I've realized is that every time around elections time, I always vote. But people have lost hope. And for me, that is precisely the reason why they need to vote. And that is how you'll be able to change everything. Because everything that exists around us, it's political. If you do not have access to clean water, it goes back to political power. If you do not have access to electricity and sanitation, it goes back to political power. If you do not have access to electricity, it goes back to political power. So I think people who, in fact, us as the youth, if we are not willing to take part in these elections, that we undermine the power that we have. And yet again, we still come back and complain. So we are not failing to tap into that power that we have, which is the only power which can be the first step in creating a better future for ourselves. If we can have a governing party or a political party that is honest enough, that is truly concerned about the lives of an African child, that truly wants to transform the lives of an African child. If we can have that type of leadership, and if it can demonstrate its willingness and preparedness to change and transform the lives of an African child, then perhaps maybe that is how we can be able to tap into that and change a political party that is governing us at the moment, right? But I think we as the youth must first understand the power that we have, and that is in our elections. And because we're reluctant and we're not willing to take part in these elections, will forever and ever, year in and year out, have the same story repeat itself, simply because we are not willing to make the necessary changes for ourselves in the coming future.
You know, I love the fact that you said we've lost hope and the whole point of undermining our power. We've lost hope, we've undermined our power, and now because we've undermined our power, you find movements that exist like this Operation Dubula. Like you said,
Mm.
it's resulting in both. So Operation Dubula is like it's unemployment and then corruption gave birth to this movement because of what we've lost our hope. We we've undermined the power that we have as Africans to say we have the power to remove whoever is holding office and is not being accountable. So we birthed such movements, Operation Dubula, which is a movement I'm very concerned about as an African because, like I voiced this to you, I'm very concerned about this movement because when I read about this movement that it's the understanding of me understanding is that they want to they have a grievance against immigrants in South Africa, right?
Mm.
However, my issue with that is that they say they are the legitimate voice of South Africans. Like, can we just hold up a bit? Like, legitimate. So now, when you know when I read about it, and I'm like, okay, legitimate voice. So this legitimate voice that resulted in the murder of Elvis Nyati. Like, so that is, are we still calling ourselves a legitimate voice that is also birthing more violence into our country? You know, it's that, okay, we're having these movements, and how can we start, we initiate a movement that at the same time is coupled with violence? Is this movement actually a movement that is positive, or are we just ranging because of certain things that we, societal ills that we see? Like, I'm really worried about that, and I'm not out here trying to attack anybody. Fetch me if you want to fetch me. No, really, no. Fetch me if you want to fetch me. But like, this, this is this is Africa. We need to be protective of it and our people. This is the motherland. We cannot be in the name of movements losing people. Do you get what I mean? Because something systematic cannot be sorted through violence. Because now,
Yeah.
how is something how is a systematic issue that we have as a country, we are addressing it through violence? So I have an issue with that. Hence, my second last question to you is that, um can you speak more on the consequences? Like, what do you see happening, because of this movement?
I think first and foremost, we need to look at one point. Any organization, once it is birthed, they almost have like one thing in common, and that is to say that whatever that we seek to advance, it is legitimate for our constituencies. So any political party would say that, although they are not a political party, they are a movement. However, they do have a constituency. But I think what then would make them say that we are a legitimate voice of South Africans, it is because predominantly issues that they raise are issues that are all faced by South Africans in their respective communities. And I would like to think that they arise or they arrive at that conclusion or on that basis that whatever challenges that I'm faced with at Soweto, I know for a fact that in Zamdela, in Proteas Land, in Kabeja, in Kwamashu, there are similar issues. So I think that the legitimate voice comes from there. Look, how they conduct their their operation, it's quite questionable, right? And we are all aware of what happened. A life was lost because of the altercations that happened. But also, and you remember what I told you a few weeks back, that Operation Dubula, it is a manifestation of our government's failure. And that is my contention, whether we like it or not. I really think so. And I will try to prove to you why I say that. Number one, we've got an issue of borders in South Africa. We've got illegal immigrants coming into South Africa, right? And already that on its own, something that should not be acceptable. Our Home Affairs Minister has always spoke about that. And I also want to give you a typical example. Yesterday, I was in communication with my girlfriend, and she was telling me that one of her clients wants to migrate to Canada. And one of the first requirements that they needed from that client was that you must at least have 300,000 so that you prove to us that you are not going to be a burden to us, so that you'll be able to live and survive on your own before you can find any job or before you can take part in our economy. So what South Africans also saying is that there is nothing wrong about that. Canada is doing it, right? They are not saying that we do not want immigrants into our country. They're saying if you come, just make sure that you are going to contribute positively. And that is what any other country would want for themselves. Right? So
Yes.
number one is that we've got our borders where there's issues of corruption there. We've got people who are coming into our countries illegally. That's not something that I do agree with. Right? So now they do come into the country, and you are now a citizen in another country and you are not there legally. So then we must ask ourselves, what is the purpose of you coming into our country? What are you going to do? If you are not documented, if you are residing illegally in our country, if buildings are occupied illegally, then that is an act of criminality. And it should be dealt with such acts. If there are people operating in a country illegally, if they are occupying buildings illegally, then the law enforcement should also come into the party. And that is also another problem that I have. Our law enforcement is not strong enough, right? And if it is not strong enough, then illegal immigrants will do as they please. So one thing that we need to look at, I believe, is that it's our law enforcement on our borders, right? And people who come into the country, they are more than allowed to come, right? Like any other country, provided that they are not going to commit any acts of criminality, and that they are going to help grow our economy. So in that basis, I'll be quite happy to welcome immigrants into our country, so that we all work together and build our nations effectively. But also, again, I think Operation Dudula, it speaks to the issue of active citizenship. I mean, if you are a member of a community and you know of the social ills that are happening within your community, you then have a responsibility or a duty to say, you know what, I've got so and so evidence or this evidence. Can we then work together with the law enforcement? And I think that is how the Operation Dudula can go about, to say we have these concerns happening in our communities, and we do not want to deal with these things on our own. Can we then work together with the police stations or the law enforcement within our communities to try and eradicate all the challenges that we are faced with in our societies? Because whether we like it or not, government can only do so much. We also have a duty and a responsibility to protect our surroundings and environments. And I think perhaps maybe Operation Dudula can try to work hand in hand with the law enforcement.
Oh wow. I love that you highlighted the law enforcement and that people should not be taking the law into their own hands. Like
Exactly.
we cannot be living in the times where, apartheid times where we grandfathers were shot, were killed and all of that. The people cannot be taking the law in their hands, as well as we need, if you want to start movements like that, we in communities, we already know our communities and we need to work together. This is not a duty of the government alone, but we need people working together. However,
Exactly.
I still, because yes, Pan-Africanist, I will always say, this is the motherland. This is the motherland, and I understand the frustrations of many that so much is happening in South Africa. Like we have so many uh, issues. It's so much. The crime is rife, and all of that. But let's not, in the interest and the love of our people, let's not put our people in danger because of movements that are are come with they I understand the vision that they want to implement. However, let us not be ignorant that people are dying. This is also perpetuating violence in our communities.
Exactly.
As much as we have these movements, and consider the fact that the violence is perpetuated, and losing we are losing people, and we cannot be losing people in such ways, because what are we no, it's okay when something goes wrong, let's burn people, let's kill people, let's just not give people an opportunity to speak themselves. It's violence is the answer. That I think my issue with this movement in particular is the violence that it comes with. And when I look at it, when I predict the future of this movement, I just see a movement that will just perpetuate more violence in our communities. And can we also talk about that? In as much as we talk about the law enforcement that comes with being, entering the country, in the correct way, let's also talk about the after effects of this. That we are just birthing violence into our communities. We are teaching people that it is okay to be violent. I think that's my issue. And my last question or statement that I want you to say, want you to share is that if you had anything, like, if you wanted to cough out anything, since we are Africans going to be coughing out whatever is in our chest, what message do you have to African leaders? If you were given an opportunity to stand in parliament and say something to these African leaders, what would you want to cough out to them?
I think before I come into that, I think one thing that we must also look into and we must ask ourselves is, and moving beyond the borders of South Africa, is what is the state of African leadership, right?
Yes.
And I think we need to genuinely ask ourselves that question: what is the state of African leadership, right? Because when people migrate, it could either be they're going to seek economic opportunities, or maybe
Yes.
right, and that is predominantly why, right?
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong about that. There's nothing wrong about somebody saying, I want to move from a country to another. But we all know that in some parts of our countries, part of the reason why people would come to South Africa is because precisely of the issues that we are faced with. So I think perhaps maybe one day, or maybe on your series, you need to speak about the state of leadership and what kind of leaders do we have in South
Yes.
Africa.
Yes.
But I think one thing that just pops to my mind is that one thing that I would say to African leaders, all of them, is that they can do better, and they all know that. I don't have to say anything sophisticated or philosophical. They know that they can do better, but they are just not willing to do that, right? And at the end of the day, who suffers the most? It's not only South Africans, but it is an entire black race. That's who suffers the most, right? And we know that we all have the means. Our leaders know that they have the means to turn Africa into a beautiful continent that it truly is. But they're just not willing to do that. And it could be a lot of reasons: self-interest, could be corruption, or maybe just the love of power and clinging on to power for too much and not doing what you are mandated to do. So my answer to African leaders is that they can do better, and they know that they can do better. They are just not willing to do better for their people. That is my belief.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Ntsane. I also love that you mentioned, like, thank you for the points. They will be addressed according to, as we have more episodes. And I also love the fact that I feel like a part of this platform is also to educate, because I believe that maybe many South Africans also don't understand, there are many reasons due to migration. People don't just migrate everything due to climate. We have people countries who migrate because of they cannot express their sexuality in the African countries, and find that South Africa is embracing of their sexuality, and that's why they come to this to be themselves. So as we progress with the episodes, I also want to be tackling reasons of migration, educating South Africans and Africans across the continent, because the issue of migration is not only faced in South Africa. We have the crisis of the Horn of the African region. There's also a very high migration issue there because of political instability. You get what I mean? People are moving, are migrating from Sudan to Uganda and all of that, because in their countries they are experiencing violence, political instability. What's happening in Ethiopia. There's always something happening in the African continent, and people need to be safe. The reality is that people need to be safe, and Africa is home. Africa is home. This is not a playground. This is not a playground. Africa is not a playground. Africa is home. Africa is home to the displaced. Africa is home to the refugees. And let us treat Africa like it is home. As we end today, that's what I wanted to leave us with, let us treat Africa like it is home. Let us, when we have issues, let us address these issues in a way that is not going to be perpetuating violence in our communities or bringing division. Because what we want a prosperous Africa, and a prosperous Africa is an Africa that is united, not divided. So I leave you with those words today that Africa is home. This is not a playground. We can do better. African leaders can do better, and Africans themselves can do better. Let's stop perpetuating violence in our communities and unite. This is the motherland. Biko did not die for this. Biko did not
Yeah.
die for this. Biko did not die for this. I thank you so much, Ntsane, for your time. Thank you so much for your contribution. I appreciate it so much. This is season 1, Africa 1. Thank you so much for tuning. See you on the next one. Bye bye.
Okay.